Good afternoon, people. It's good to be back again to look at Java, fundamentals of Java. Again, Darius. Yeah. So now it's time for us to delve into Java in a little bit more detail now. Okay. I'm just hoping so that you practiced exercise that was given in the last session that we had, that you had some practice session there. Okay, how was it? Obviously, you had a good experience, I guess so. Okay, so we'll start with part one of this Java session. Okay, let's just get a little bit back to review. Okay, and build on what we started from. Okay, so looking at just the structure of Java program. Okay, Java program is made of classes like we talked about earlier. Okay, so here is how it looks like. So a public class demo program in this case is a class header. It bears the name of the class, and also the opening and the closing bracket you are seeing there encloses the code or the other classes that will exist in this program. Okay, and then a class will contain the methods. Okay, it can contain methods and it can contain also other functions. Okay, so in this case, the main method is a main program that will serve as the entry to a Java program that we are developing. So in this case of this class demo program that we have a main program which takes as arguments string what? String array, as you can see there as arguments. And then it's set as a public status, as a public access modifier. Okay, and then those two opening and closing brackets, that pair encloses the method body. The code that goes here is enclosed under this main method. Okay, this is a structure that you will be able to see. Sometimes it may not matter where this opening bracket, okay, this opening bracket, okay, and the closing bracket comes this side at the find this side. Okay, it doesn't matter. But writing like this makes the program readable. Okay, it makes the program readable and it makes following it very, very easy. Okay, all right. So now it is in that method that we write statements that will be executed by the Java virtual machine. Okay, for example, here we have this class as our sample coach Watson, and then it has the main method there. So this main method has two statements in it. Okay, it has two statements in it, and notice at the end of each statement is a semicolon. This is okay, the statement delimiter. Okay, so you don't forget the semicolon. It ends a statement in Java. Okay, so now we have system.out println. So this statement itself shows that we are trying to print what is contained in these brackets, the curly brackets. Anything enclosed in the double quotation mark inside the system.println, okay, is going to be printed the way it appears to be. That's a rule, or that's a syntax. So anything that you want to be printed as such, the way they appear, then you enclose them in double quotation marks that you see there. Okay, so we have two systems that are printing these statements, the sentences. And can you see Down there is the output that we're expected to see. So exactly what is in double quotes is what is printed here. All right. So when we execute this program, what we'll get on the screen is exactly what is there, which is a quote by Thomas Watson, Chairman IBM, 1943, with another one. Remember, we said print line, LN at the far end there, which means the next printout is going to go on the next line. That's what that means. Let's move on. Now we start looking at data types in Java. Okay, data types in Java. Data types will determine what kind of the value that a variable is going to hold. They are what we call variables, of course, in Java, like in any other program. So each of those variables is designed to store a value. To store a value, variables are used in programming to store values that will be used during a program execution. So these variables are given locations in memory when a program is executing. Okay, it is like it is a reserve name, a reserve that is provided for during a program execution. So in memory in the RAM, so that memory is going to be reserved for us to store a value there. So variables are named location in memory. Now they are of types. So now we are talking about those data types that are found in Java. So we have these, the primitive or simple data types in Java, the simple ones. Okay, we have 4 of them, which is a byte, and then we have short, we have int, long. Okay. Then 2 of them represent the floating point numbers. Okay. So there is also float. So float is a decimal. If you want to declare a variable that will be holding decimal numbers, then you use float. Then double is a huge number, okay, going in the millions, okay, above what? Int, long, yes. So these double and long. The double is actually a very huge number, okay, above the long. So then you have one of them which represents characters. Of course, you can tell from the way it is written that it's char. The char is a short for character actually. So this one, if you want a variable to store characters, then you use char. Okay. And then we have a boolean which stores values which are either true or false. Okay, boolean values are just either true or false. That's how they are. Okay, so these are primitive data type in Java. Now let's talk about reserved words. Reserved words. A reserved word is an expression that you do not use, which is not available for a programmer to use or to use as a name of a variable or as a name of a class or anything that a programmer can think of using. This is not available as an option. It is a reserved word in a particular programming language, meaning you can't use that as a value, as a variable. No, you can't. It's not available. So these are words that a Java virtual machine specifically look for and compile. These are instructions that are specifically available to execute a program. These are instructions of a program. So they are not available for us to use in our naming of variables, for example, or in our naming of classes, in our naming of methods. Name it. Those are not available. It's like it's a set of vocabulary, in other words. And reserved words are a set of vocabulary for a particular programming language. So yeah, some of them. So we have abstract, Boolean, break, byte, and so on. Yes, cast, final, name it, all those. Okay? For if those are reserved words or available vocabulary of a particular programming language, right? So if you want to get something done, you use any of these. Okay, so that's what the reserved words are. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many more. Okay, now that takes us to variables. I've touched a little bit on variables. Okay, of course, yeah. Like I said, a variable is simply a name of a location in memory, which is there to store a value. In Java, these variables must be declared before they are used. So you must declare a variable before it is used. Okay? How is it declared? Okay, it is declared first by starting with a data type, the data type that it is going to upload the value, and then the name that you are going to think of, the variable name. Now, it is advised that the variable name must be meaningful. The variable name must be meaningful. If it's going to be holding, okay, sum or total, let it be total as a name. If it's going to hold age, let it be that instead of calling it or number. You are better off calling it with some meaningful expression. That way, your program, like we said, we emphasized earlier, your program is going to be much more readable to someone. It's going to be easily followed. It's going to facilitate maintainability. Okay? So this is how we declare data type, then followed by the variable name. Of course, when you declare it, never forget the semicolon. It can make a lot of things very different if it is missing. Okay. Now, multiple variables of one type can be declared by commas. So, like what is indicated there. So you can actually declare multiple variables with one data type. In this case, we have integer, then we have count, separated by comma, and term, and result. All these are variables of the same type. That's what it means. However, never forget to include a semicolon there. Right? Yes. Sometimes variables can be declared and immediately assigned a value. When that happens, we call it assigning or initializing a variable. So you can actually declare a variable. When it is declared, it contains some random value that you don't want to use, but you may want to actually give it an initial value to begin with. So this is what you are seeing here. So for this one, we have declared a variable called total, and we have assigned it a value. The statement, the number 2 statement down there, is what we call initialization. So total has been initialized to 0. That's what you call it. Okay. Then variables can be initialized at the same time they are being declared. That's another way. Initialization can be done first by declaring a value and then assign it a value. Or it can be declared and assigned a value at the same time in one statement, like we are seeing it indicated there. So this is a quicker way to do things. Yeah. If you are quicker, if you are more concerned about readability, then you go by the first one. But if you become more experienced, then you can simply do as it has been done on the second declaration and assignment there. Again, we can do more declaration, multiple declaration and assignment, and multiple assignments at the same time, as we can see here. So this statement also initialize declares, it initializes multiple variables of the same type. So that's about variables. And if just from the way it sounds, variables, it means the value is bound to change, to vary. It doesn't mean that when we store a particular value in a variable, that will be the value that was existed there. Never. Variables, from the way it sounds, it means vary, to vary. So values can change in a variable. That's something important to note. Okay. Now here is an example of variables. Okay. The use of variables. So we have this short program guitar strings with the many method there. Notice we have declared the variable strings, okay, integer strings. Obviously, strings of a guitar. We have declared it and assigned it a value, or initialized it with a value of 6. So now we want to print what is its content. Have you noticed? So here we are actually printing out. Yeah. So this is an example for a simple program of guitar strings. So we're demonstrating a declaration and an assignment at the same time. So system.out.println is going to print. Have you noticed here? Be careful. Notice, pay attention. With this that is enclosed in a double quotes, okay, it's going to come out exactly as it is written. Then remember the plus sign here, we add two strings, concatenate. So plus strings. Now notice here, this strings here is actually printing out the variable here. Now we are not printing this word itself. It's not in double quotes, if you have noticed. It's standing on its own. It's actually a variable. So what it is the virtual machine here is going to read the contents of this variable. So that's what is going to be displayed here. In this case, 6 is going to be printed on the screen. Have you noticed? Then we are proceeding to adding strings. String. So now, if you noticed, it's in double quotation marks. So this is going to be printed the way exactly it is appearing. Okay. So the result will actually be a statement, a sentence, a guitar has 6 strings. Have you noticed? The value that was assigned is the value that is going to be printed. So in this program, we have actually demonstrated the declaration and the initialization, as well as the printing what? Printing the value from the variable. Okay. Right. Now we move on. Example 2. Okay. So in this program, we are demonstrating the use of an assignment statement to change the value stored in a variable. Okay, so here is another example to demonstrate the use of an assignment statement to change the value stored in a variable. Okay, so like we said earlier, the value stored in a variable can change. For example, here we have the declaration of int players equal to 5 as an assignment original initialization of a value. So now we are printing it out there in the next the next print out statement there. Of course, printing a basketball team as the value of players, that variable is 5, so print 5 there. Now see what happens when we assign a different value to the same variable, players. We assign it number 6 there. Okay, and please just take note of the comment. Have you noticed this double forward slashes? They are denoting a comment describing what is happening. So we are assigning a value here. This is an assignment statement. So after assigning 6, we try to print it out. Have you noticed? We are getting 6 now from the same variable players. We try now to assign it with the 15 value, and what we get printing this time around, we have 15 as a value there in the players. So this demonstrates how a value in a variable can change, and depending on the assignment that we make, or indeed during a certain operation that may happen. Okay, so that's another example there. Okay, right, moving forward. Now I want to explain the difference between the operation, concatenation, as well as the addition operator. Remember, the concatenation is a plus sign. Also, the addition is a plus sign. So how does the difference take place? Where does the difference come from? Okay, so here we go. The concatenation adds 2 strings. Concatenation adds 2 strings. Okay? Whereas the addition add numbers. That's one thing to note. So how can this be differentiated in the code? Look at this. So we have here in the print line statement here, this value 24 and 45 concatenated. Listen here. So 24 and 25 concatenated in a string. Listen. So here we can concatenate in this one and this one, 45. Then next we are trying to add. So have you noticed? We are adding here. So 24 and 45 in the first one, they're getting concatenated. This plus at the beginning of 24 makes everything different, because notice we are trying to actually add. You see, you know why the result is like that here? We are trying to concatenate this string plus this value E. Have you noticed? So get it from here. So this is a string in the double quotation mark. So we are adding this 24 here. So because we are putting together this string and this number, it's like alphanumeric. Okay, we have alpha this side and alphabet this side, and then we have number here. Things like 2-pack. 2-pack becomes what? An alphanumeric, and an alphanumeric is treated as a string. So because this is alphanumeric that is coming about this combination here, it just becomes it is treated as what? As a string. Okay? So because now this and this are treated as a string, so plus another thing, it is still alphanumeric. And therefore we simply concatenate all these values together. And what we get is this result here. You see that? Now what's the difference here in the second arrangement? Here we are adding, okay, this is a string, but remember the BODMAS operation. The BODMAS operation shows that what is in bracket must be evaluated first. So here we have an arithmetic expression in the bracket. So this is going to be evaluated first before it is concatenated with this string here. So this is a difference that you can see here. So concatenation still more, it maintains that we are adding 2 strings. So letters plus numbers, this is still treated as what? String. Alphanumeric is treated as what? String. That's what is bringing about this difference we are seeing here. Okay, so let's get moving. Now we have more operators in Java. So we have arithmetic operations, just like in any other programming language. We have plus, addition, those are the arithmetic operations. And then we have these examples. Okay, addition and subtraction within the operands. Okay, so yeah, this is primary stuff here that you can see here. Yeah, it's an example of arithmetic operations happening on some numbers. Okay, moving on here. Now conversions. So a rule that we agree to follow, even though it's not required by the language, is said to be a conversion. So there are certain rules that are just adopted by nature, by virtue of having, or by virtue of so many people having done the same thing. Those are conversions. Yeah. Now, a common Java conversion is beginning a class name with an upper letter. You notice that? So it's just a conversion. You can start it with a small letter, but the common practice has been to use a capital. You notice that? Yeah. So, yeah, that is something like that. Names of variables except constant and methods by convention never start with an uppercase letter. So this is again by convention. You can do otherwise if you so wish. But the common practice has been that a variable starts with a small letter, in lowercase. But with a class, you start with a capital letter. You see that? So conventions are just common practices, okay, that have been accepted as rules, sort of. Yeah. Okay. Division and remainder with the int operands. So this is operations now, arithmetic operations on numbers, integers, or numbers declared as integers. Okay, I think this is just some practice that you can do, by the way. So do some operations here and there, some arithmetic operations, you see what happens. Okay? Yeah. For the remainder, I think that is another operations that you can use when you divide certain numbers and you want to get a remainder. It's that operation there, module. Okay? So that gets the remainder of this number. Have you noticed? That's what's happening there. Okay, more operations. Okay, more operations there. So now there's precedence, operator precedence. I think that is something that if you recall very well, you had studied about in primary education then. Okay, which one comes first? You probably recall BODMAS. Okay, brackets first, then division, and then multiplication, addition, then subtraction. Something similar. Multiplication, addition, and subtraction. Okay. Brackets of division. So something similar is what is followed also in Java. So multiplication comes first, then followed by division, and then this module. So it takes precedence over this plus and then followed by minus. So the compiler will read this as follows. So it will start with dividing here before addition. You noticed here? So this is how it was going to read it. To start for the next arithmetic expression, to start with the multiplication, then subtraction, just like that. So that's how it works. So there are precedents. Yeah. Okay. So increment and decrement operators. So there are shortcuts for incrementing operators and decrementing operators. Incrementing operator is actually plus plus. When you write plus plus, it means you are incrementing. You're actually making an addition of 1. Okay, constant addition of just 1. Okay, that's a common difference. Okay, so plus plus adds 1 to its operand. An operand is now a value on which what an operation is taking place, or on which an operation is carried out. So the decrement operator is actually an opposite of plus plus, which is minus. Okay, so a statement like count plus plus means that this statement adds 1 to this variable count. That's what it means. Equivalent to adding the contents of count plus 1. That's the meaning here. Now that takes us to yet another different variable called constant. So now a constant is a type of variable, but one whose value doesn't change. So the value in a constant will remain the same during the execution of a program. The constants can be named by assigning them to variables. Yeah. So have you noticed? So this is how a constant can be assigned, like 32. If you want to use 32, you assign it to a variable like that. Now, to prevent a constant from being changed, sometimes, yes, you can assign a variable that you think yourself that it is a constant, it should not change. But if you simply assign it to a variable, there is a possibility that that value may change. It may be replaced. Remember the case of when we are changing the number of players, okay? The string, which was declared as number of players, okay? When the number was kept changing, that may happen to some value that you think should be a constant. So how do you prevent that kind of situation to occur? You use a reserved word called final. So when you have a final at the preceding the declaration, it means you're actually declaring what? A constant value. So final declares a constant value here. Have you noticed? So this base variable change will remain unchanged. Any attempt to change to assign a different value would result in an error, in a protest by the compiler. Okay? So this is how you prevent, how you declare constant and prevent anything that you think is okay, constant value from being changed. Okay. Part 2. Okay. String class. Okay. So in Java, we have classes that are predefined. We have classes that are predefined, and those classes that are predefined belong to packages. Okay. So we have what we call string class, which is one of the most important pre-written classes that come with Java. So these are pre-written classes that come with Java. So there are those packages that you do not have to think about or to write because but they exist for you to use. So there are certain things that have been done for us. Okay. Remember the case of Excel, the average, those functions, average, sum, if, those come what? Pre-written there. Of course, it is something that you can do also on your own. But guess what? These guys, they thought about operations that are done frequently. They did that for you. So now there is a string class. Okay. So every character string delimited by double quotation marks represent a string object. Every character string delimited by double quotation marks represent a string object. Remember those that we are displaying, those sentences that we have been displaying. those are delimited, those represent string objects. So note that class names always start with a capital letter. So what is this about? What are we saying here? Okay, so look at this. So e.g. here, hello, this is a string object. This too is a string object, alphanumeric that we talked about. So each string object can have methods that can do use of things to a string of characters. You notice? Yeah. Okay. So creating string objects, a variable either odds a primitive type. So primitive type is int, remember? So a variable can hold a string. Okay, can hold the primitive data type of value, which can hold an object. Have you noticed? So this is string. So can hold an object. So title here can hold an object or a sentence in double quote. Have you noticed here? That's what it means. So remember, anything that is contained in some double quotation mark is what? It's an object. Okay. So a class name can be thought of as a to declare an object. A class name can be thought of as a type to declare an object. Okay. So this string here, this type here that has been mentioned here, it's preceding this variable, which can hold an object, is therefore a class. So string is actually a class. It can be thought of as a class, this data type. A class defining this object or this variable which can hold an object. So when we declare like this, we declare a string like that. Here we are assigning it to an object. Have you noticed? Just like primitive variables, we can combine a declaration in one statement like that. So we are declaring an object on this type of class string. Remember, strings, the string object, the string class is a class which exists for us to use. It is already existing, this class. So we're just declaring a variable need, which is an object. So we don't have to start thinking about what is contained in a class, how to do that, how it manipulates. This class already exists, so we're just declaring an object we need to hold this object. So this is an instance of one object. So just like primitive variables, we can actually make a declaration like that. Okay. So now back to the string class here again. So the string class contains so many methods that we can use. Remember, a class contains what? The definition of the data type as well as the methods of that class. So we have those methods that exist in the strings class for us to use for free. So some of those operations that can be done on the strings are length method. You noticed? You can tell the method from the way it is written. So this is the name of the method and then the brackets there for parameters. So these brackets actually in front of a name shows that this is actually a function or a method. So we have also to uppercase function or method. We have also to lowercase method. You see? We need a string object to apply the methods to.